Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Marketing and Leadership Series with Kevin and Craig, where we add value to people's lives, happening every Thursday on ebizradio.com. You can catch the Lunchtime Series on all major podcast channels, and as per usual, marketing and communications expert and co-host Craig Pagely. How you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm good. Great to be chatting, and yeah, happy birthday for this past weekend.
Yes. The birthday was loads of fun. I got to do. I normally, Eugene's nice that way. I normally get to do what I want to do, but it was. He arrived. I actually took a photo of it. He arrived in the bedroom with 43 candles on this cream cheesecake. And I was like, you're gonna set the house on fire. Can we just stop with that, please? And it was like this flaming thing, and he's like walking into the bedroom, like near the bed. I was like, you just like, but it was fun, yes. But we had loads of fun, and ended the day with some jacuzzi time and champagne. So I was like, yes, it was a day worth spending.
Fantastic, good.
So really, really cool. And your birthday's not coming up or anything, are you? You've had a good weekend?
It's still 4 or 5 months away still. Yeah, but I haven't even begun to think about it. Yeah, no, it was a good weekend. Had some mates. The internationals are starting to travel, which is great. So I had friends from Dubai and London, and with their partners from New Zealand and things like that. So really starting to get to feel international again, which is great.
Yeah, I'm so excited about just like traveling. I'm so I can't wait for it. Great, but for today's conversation, don't you want to like just give us a bit of our reminders of where we ended off last week on the retail payment spaces?
Brilliant, Kevin. Yeah, thanks. So the key reminder points from the report titled 2022 Commerce and Payment Trends Report, 5 Seismic Trends Shaping the Future of Commerce. That's really where I believe the key takeaways come from. We covered a host of reports last week, but this report in particular, picking up on those trends, published by Global Payments, who spoke with various payment experts and surveyed more than 100 global businesses and issuers. And the survey data identified 5 key trends that will significantly impact commerce in 2022. So the 5 key trends are noted as follows. Trend 1 is customer expectations are changing and businesses are adapting. So in 2022, businesses will need to enhance their omni-channel strategy and invest in refining their digital experience to meet customers' expectations at every single point in the journey, beginning with payments. And people who want to have that frictionless commerce experience at the point when they want to transact, and not just at the point of sale, it has to be across the entire experience. Point 2 is the buy now, pay later becoming such big business. Paying for purchases with tailored, flexible buy now, pay later plans even exist for small ticket items these days, and it's most definitely set to become one of the fastest growing payment trends in 2022, to the point that 65% of merchants actually plan to add the buy now, pay later proposition as a payment method in 2022. Point 3 is the acceleration of connected commerce, something that we all expect. The digital first economy highlights the need for retailer businesses to connect and improve their entire journey, which means building a more connected digital commerce ecosystem that will help produce better business outcomes. And integrating all of the points of commerce lets these businesses create that more personalized customer experience across the value chain, from marketing to product selection to the payments, and then obviously to shipping. Trend 4 is the digitization of B2B payments, something that I believe is really going to grow rapidly as well. In 2022, these payments will undergo digital transformation to meet expectations of both vendors and suppliers. And businesses have seen that the employees need to manage their accounts payable, accounts receivable, expense reimbursements, and employee-initiated spending outside of the physical office, also brought in by the pandemic, and therefore digitizing these payments is essential, Kevin. And finally, point 5 is the attention to data and privacy end to end. So protecting customer data and privacy is among the top 3 trends that will have the greatest impact on business 22 onwards. Much attention in recent years has obviously been geared towards reducing fraud in the e-commerce environments, but businesses also need to ensure that they have the correct data privacy policies, procedures, protections in place, especially as technology technology and regulations globally are advancing so rapidly. And yeah, those are the 5 key reminders of last week's Payment Day conversation.
Fantastic, Craig. Yeah, I was listening to, I was sharing some of the podcast with someone recently, and they saw that, the metaverse and their, retail spaces and how shows sort of follow onto each other. So we got a really good accolade from someone saying, wow, the series is put together so well. I'm like, yes, that Craig does an exceptional job on meeting this. So fascinating. Thanks, how Kevin. It ties into each other. So kudos to you for putting all of that together.
Thanks.
And to today's point, Craig. So tell us what we are discussing today.
So, Kevin, I want to look at the role of middle management and the importance that this role plays in organizations today. And yeah, much has been written about this topic, and there definitely are some really important insights to share. And again, just for listeners, is that we try and intermingle the leadership aspects at least every third show. So we're definitely starting to get into quite a nice cycle. And you'll see at the end when we select the topic for next week, it actually is a perfect segue into a topic which in a week thereafter will have absolute relevance back into the employee space as well.
Yeah, Craig, I think, and that's why I'm so excited about this, because for me, it is all about the leadership. It's all about the people, and there's I mean, what I do involves working with people all the time. So I'm really curious to see what you've got for us, and really what to wrap my brain around it.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so as usual, I want to just first set some context to the term management. I've reviewed a number of online resources and pulled a definition from about 3 or 4 for our listeners, Kevin. And like I like to start off with, I just throw out the good old Wikipedia definition as a start. So management, or managing, is an administration of an organization, whether it is a business, a non-profit organization, or a government body. Wikipedia also notes that management includes the activities of setting the strategy of an organization and coordinating the efforts of the employees or volunteers to accomplish its objectives through the application of available resources such as financial, natural, technology, and human. And that's important to understand the multiple layers of resources. Yeah. But then moving on, referencing a great article, An Introduction to Management is found on lumenlearning.com. We note that management is the act of getting people together to accomplish desired goals and objectives using available resources efficiently and effectively. And interesting, it talks to resources again there. And since organizations can be viewed as systems, management can also be defined as a human action, including design to facilitate the production of useful outcomes from a system. So a really nice definition in that regard. And then the article actually goes on to note that management functions include planning, organizing, staffing, leading, or directing and controlling of an organization, being a group of one or more people or entities, or effort for the purpose of accomplishing a goal. And yeah, there are definitely several different resources and types within management. And the final point I want to note from that wonderful article, Kevin, is that modern trends in management favor agile, iterative processes that focus on innovation, software development, and most importantly, social impact.
Yeah, Craig, it's always funny to me when you specifically speaking about middle management. So many corporates have that instinctive way of going, the salesperson that is great at sales would probably make a really great manager, and they sort of put them at, and then they fail hopelessly at being a manager, and it's there are key criteria that middle management still needs to be able to do. And I love the point of you saying that implementing the strategy of an organization. But when we touched about the topic of leadership a few weeks ago, we learned that there are different leadership styles. What can you tell us about the management styles?
Yeah, Kevin, as with leadership styles, there definitely are a number of different management styles. Referencing the same article, Introduction to Management, we note that there are different styles and that the management process has changed over the recent years. And on the back of that, the addition of work teams and servant leadership has also changed what is expected from managers and what managers actually expect from their employees. So, you raised the points about the identification of a salesperson possibly becoming a manager. That is that misalignment of the expectations from managers and managers expecting from their employees. So the three management styles referenced in the article are defined as follows. So firstly, we have traditional management, which is a hierarchy of employees with low-level management, mid-level management, and then obviously senior management. And in these traditional management systems, the manager sets out all the expectations for the employees in meeting their goals, but the manager also receives the reward of meeting their goals. And that's an important point to note. Then we have team management, where in the team management arrangement, the manager is actually the guiding hand to help members of the team work together to solve the problem, but doesn't necessarily dictate policy, and the entire team receives reward of meeting those goals. An important point there, deviation from number one. And then the servant management, which is an approach where the manager actually supplies the resources the employees need to meet the company goals. And in servant leadership, the organization actually recognizes employees as experts in the field and works with them and helps them to become more effective and efficient. So really interesting to see the movements away from center-focused individual ego to a collective approach where actually employees are the center of achievements and recognition.
Yeah. What's interesting about this, Craig, sorry, as much as these are specific styles to management and the different styles you do get, it's also very interesting that, there are still key skills that management always struggle with. I don't know if we're going to get to any of key skills that they actually need, but it's, there are very similar skills that management really have to move through. I'm just thinking, the power of enthusiasm. So being able to really get people enthusiastic about why they do what they're doing. I also find that, people struggle with time management. Some leaders just don't know how. And the third thing that you often find is people don't know how to delegate.
Sure.
So they're moving through this leadership, irrelevant of their style of management, they're still, lacking key critical skill around how to implement your actual management style.
Yeah, so that's really good that you reference it. We're not touching on the actual skills in this particular conversation, but maybe we can expand in that for the next. So, but really been looking at sort of the objectives of the tiers of management and the importance of the role of middle management as opposed to the skills at this particular point. But sort of, to close off that kind of thinking in the conversation, there was a really effective statement that came out of the article, Kevin, that states that no matter which type of management style is used by an organization, the main objective of managers is actually to help employees reach company goals and maintain company standards and policies. And obviously, skills plays a critical role in being able to achieve that. But at the end of the day, if you look at the core objective of what a manager is, it's to ensure that they help employees reach those company goals and maintain those company standards and policies.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know the saying, but people do better when they know better, and if they don't know better, they can't do better, right? So, when you're putting someone in a position, you can make the assumption that they're probably going to know how to do this and how to, really keep the strategy and reinforce the strategy of the organization. But you would also just be going on an assumption, right?
Yeah.
So you really have to, a lot more needs to be done for middle management than is being done. And that's, the experiences I have, especially in corporates.
Very, very much so, Kevin. Throwing statements around, assumption is the mother of all evil. That's
Yes.
it's so true when it comes to the importance of not making assumptions in organizations. Yeah,
absolutely. But I mean, people are always talking about the level of their role in an organization. So either as a status reference or as a benchmark to set remuneration expectations around these. And it's funny that, I mentioned that to someone the one day, and I shared something on my Instagram, I think, and it's funny how people sometimes ask you what it is you do so they know how to measure themselves against you. And I'm going, that's such a true statement. So, but I mean, with that in mind, what can we share regarding levels of management, Craig?
Yeah, Kevin, we all know that many employees are title focused, which in most instances reflects a certain level within an organization, which also impacts on, obviously, the management layer. Looking at an article titled 3 Different Levels of Management, which was posted onto sprighr.com on Feb 12, 2020, under the HR Professionals Leadership Management Tips section. It covers these points in a really succinct way, Kevin. So the article opens by setting the context for the term levels of management, which refers to the line of division that exists between various managerial positions in an organization. And as the size of the company or the workforce increases, the number of the levels increases along with it, and vice versa. The different levels of management can determine the chain of command within an organization, as well as the amount of authority and typical decision-making influenced, accrued by managerial positions. So quite a mouthful, but really a complexity of dynamic and activity and layering happening in that particular paragraph, Kevin.
Yeah.
But what's key to understand here is that the levels of management can generally be classified into 3 key principal categories, all of which guide and direct managers to perform different functions. So let's just take a quick look at those. So firstly, you get administrative, managerial, or top-level management. And in this context, the level of management consists of an organization's board of directors, chief executive officer, or managing director. And it's the ultimate source of power and authority in the organization, since it oversees the goals, the policies, and the procedures of the company. And the main priority is on the strategic planning and execution of the overall business success. Importantly, the next level then is your executive or middle management layer. And this is branch or departmental managers from departmental managers actually form this middle management layer. And staff within this level are directly accountable to the top management for the functioning of their respective departments, devoting more time to organizational and directional functions. And for small organizations, there's often just one layer of middle management, but in these larger enterprises, we can definitely see sort of senior, junior layers coming into the middle management section.
Yeah.
And then lastly is the supervisory, operative, or lower level of management layer, Kevin. And this level of management really consists of supervisors, foremen, section officers, superintendents, and all the other executives whose work must do largely with HR oversight and direction from operative employees. So very much an oversight, command and control kind of layer. And simply put, managers at the lower level are primarily concerned with the execution and coordination of the day-to-day workflow that ensures the completion of projects and tasks and that all the deliverables are met. But the key takeaway and from the definitions referenced are that top-level managers are responsible for controlling and overseeing the entire organization. Middle-level managers are responsible for executing organizational plans, which comply with the company's policies, and they act as the intermediary between the top and lower level management. And lower level management focuses on the execution of tasks and deliverables, serving as role models for the employees they serve.
Yeah. You know what occurs to me, Craig, is part of what you're mentioning is, speaking about it holistically and, what those levels are. From as a licensee to Leadership Management International, we get to see, a process that actually follows, and they call it the total leadership concept. And to this point, exactly how you've placed it out or laid it out here, we have programs that are set up in a way that sort of deals with every level of management throughout the processes, from entry-level management right all the way to strategic leadership in itself. So it's funny how the correlation I'm making now compared to how you've set this up for us today. But I mean, Craig, another favorite topic of mine, we've covered the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion in detail previously. Where does the concept fit into relation to the topic of middle management layers?
Yeah, Kevin, yes, definitely great question, and something I learned quite a bit about when actually researching the topic of middle management for today's conversation. And I came across a report published by the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, which highlighted methods for companies to create more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workspace. And a really deep and intensive report, which you'd expect from the likes of Wharton, of UPenn, titled Improving Workplace Culture Through Evidence-Based Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Practices. The report was co-authored by Stephanie J. Creary, PhD Nancy Rothbard, and PhD Jared Scruggs, and was published just under a year ago in May 2021. The key takeout of the report, Kevin, suggests that improving workplace culture through evidence-based diversity, equity, and inclusion practices can definitely be achieved through middle managers. And this is mainly because middle managers are actually responsible for the daily operations of the business. Yeah. That actually became quite obvious once I read it in the context of today's conversation. The report notes that middle managers are able to actually drive the bulk of DIE work because they are responsible for the daily operation of these organizations and actually tasked with carrying out policies that directly impact and affect the lives of employees. And they have discretion over policy along with close interaction with employees. And this gives them greater power in dictating actual workplace culture, or if not dictating, enabling the shaping of workplace culture. An important point to note there, Kevin, is that these middle managers absolutely need buy-in from senior managers, because it's the senior managers who are developing the policies at that executive level, and it's the middle managers that actually need to execute. So there's an important relationship in place with the executive level to ensure that they get the support necessary to deliver the complexities of DEI policies and programs.
Craig, and this is exactly why middle management needs to be looked after, right? To exactly this point, because when you see that and you understand that, I'm thinking of the cognitive bias training program that we're doing currently. Those middle managers they're learning about business. They're stepping into a role. They're stepping into this new space where they now not only have to step up and be the person who gives the instruction, they also have to reinforce, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And how much knowledge do they even have about that when their own biases, factually being their biases, will be part of their decision-making processes? You can't get past that. Yep. So then, that middle management has to drive this organizational strategy, and they're just kind of going, okay, well, we're doing what we do, what we know how to do, and, well enough. That core focus really, really, really has to be shone upon that segment of the business, because inevitably stuff like diversity, equity, and inclusion will be instinctively made the middle management sort of decision-making processes that they get to do. And that in itself will either uphold the culture of the business or be the downfall.
Absolutely, Kevin. That's exactly it. And, the critical thing here for me is that how far have the business schools and learning and development organizations gone to actually repurpose and repackage the content to entrench the understanding of DEI across all management levels? Because it again has in many instances been pigeonholed into an HR role or something like that, but really hasn't been brought deep into the organization in its inherent clear understanding of the importance, necessity, and impact of DEI in the organization.
Craig, I must just I'm very passionate about this stuff, so I'm sorry to interject again, but again, I was doing training with regards to representation, right? The diversity, equity, and inclusion. I, as a gay man, when people say, we need representation of something or someone to know that we belong as well, right? When you're coming from a perspective as maybe not so street smart or educated around what diversity, equity, and inclusion looks like, you're instinctively going to make decisions based on how you do life, right? And just represent the word representation. That whole like Black Lives Matter, when people have spoken about it, people have like, yes, white lives matter. I was like, no, but that's not the point. The point is not that white lives don't matter. The point is, where is the actual representation within a environment? And do you actively see it? Do you actively see it in how you're recruiting people? Do your procedures and policies support everything that you're doing?
That's
these conversations.
Exactly it. Yep.
And that's why it's so important.
And again, the diversity is, to pick up on your point and your position in life. It's about diversity of people and their perspectives, and the equity is in policy, practice, and position, and the inclusion is via power, voice, or organizational culture. And it's just being able to entrench those. And then in many instances there's the justice component, which actually hangs on the side, which talks around equal rights and the equitable opportunities for all in the equation, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, so the importance here is to note that middle managers were the common denominator in DIE outcomes, and it highlighted the fact that employees who actually didn't have support from their middle managers actually reported feeling a decrease in sense of belonging, respect, and commitment. And again, it goes to really upplay the importance of middle managers understanding their responsibility in delivering DEI programs as well. Yeah. Kevin, the study measured 7 different DEI categories, and just for example would be the likes of recruiting, mentoring, training, and it measured 12 outcomes. And again, just the example of helping behavior, your inclusive climate, your job satisfaction, etc. And on the basis of that, they did some science-based recommendations, which were then suggested for managers to actually improve each of those outcomes. And what we've got here is just six recommended examples. So, and I'd love you to talk into these as well. So first was the advocacy for space where employees can actually discuss non-work topics. So not just an anti-client, thinking environment, but actually a safe space where the guard can be dropped and you can actually start talking about life, personality, troubles, success, and just celebrate a whole list of other things, but move yourself out of that work mindset.
And also, Craig, why this is so important is, first of all, as a human need, we need the acknowledgement. We're significant. We want significance. We want to understand that we are significant. But also, to have it as a manageable space, because you don't want people to get to a point where they're just sitting whining about their lives. Yes. But the fact is, if I know that I have a moment, I have a space, I have an environment where I can just go and just chill and just be and not be caught up in the work about, and know that my employer is providing a space for me to do that. I'm probably more likely feel like going there and going there often, because it's okay. I'm allowed to be a human at the end of the day. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah, very much so. But what I think a big challenge in the work from home environment is, how do you, when you're not in a physical space where you can be co-joined in a conversation, to find that neutrality and really have the chance to have a conversation around the need for acceptance and all the other layers that come with it. But when you're in the work from home environment, that lack of personal contact really does create a bit of a barrier in the success of an outcome, as opposed to being opposite each other in a conversation.
Correct, but I was chatting to someone in PR. He's a PR director for an international company, and he was saying, he's just joined this company, And his words were, "It's so great to work in a company that lead with empathy."
Nice.
That was his opening statement about this business, right? And you kind of go, we live in a remote world. We live in a world where, you have to come fetch your kids, and there's traffic, and there's all this stuff that humans need to, be considered. I think the world really needs to make that shift to kind of go, am I setting up like one-on-one time, even if it is remote that you're working, like one-on-one time with this colleague to just talk about who they are, how they're doing, and, are they having a good day? Make the time.
Excuse me. Absolutely, Kevin. Absolutely. Make the time. And empathetic leadership is probably the most important current dynamic of leadership styles for successful leadership. The second point here is familiarize yourself with programs and policies, even if you don't personally use them. And I think it's a vitally important point that so many of us just skim over. You through your induction, through your participation in an organization, you've got all your files of procedures, policies, and whatever it may be. How many people have actually reviewed every policy, understood the impact on the policy on themselves in their role in the organization? Even if those policies, some of them may not apply to them, it's important to understand the construct of a policy and the makeup of the organization. So take the time to familiarize yourself with those programs and policies.
And that's why it ties back into leadership, and leadership being the skill, because when you're a middle management, you're now suddenly dealing with people at a certain level. You're reinforcing certain policies and procedures. If you're not taking the leadership and the skill to be able to familiarize yourself with those policies and procedures, you're just, you might make mistakes. And it's that mindset about, well, it's not my business. I don't really care about the policies and procedures. But yet then you've got to ask yourself, well, what kind of leader are you? And that's really, it's a big question when it comes to middle management.
Absolutely, Kevin. Yeah. The third point here is to create a buddy system of mentorship, and then ensure that both the mentors and sponsors actually have access to resources required to enable the growth through the mentoring process. It really is, again, I look over the years of my various roles in corporate world and agency world. How many companies make it a priority for you to have a mentor in the organization? Not enough. Definitely not enough.
No. And also, having a buddy system is going to hold you accountable. Having a buddy system is the most quickest practical way to kind of partner up with someone and kind of hold each other accountable. Far more gets done, and you're probably going to start having conversations you don't generally have, based on the fact that you kind of go, okay, this is because of this buddy system. You give them, 15 minutes of your time in a week, and kind of go, okay, cool. This is your time to say whatever you want, to get it off your chest, and vice versa. Or flip it on and say, okay, what is a skill that you have that you could teach me that I'm not aware of? Or what do you, it's a really, really, really good idea. And I still don't know why companies don't have coaches employed as coaches, as a vocation in an organization.
Yes.
They simply are doing coaching. That's it. As an additional.
Kevin, the fourth point here is inclusive language, and we've touched on this in the past. It's one of those that rings a bell with you as well.
Yeah. It's even when it comes to doing any kind of coaching process, Craig, it's part of that active listening. People will tell you who they are if you just paid enough attention and listen to the language they used. Using inclusive language is unbelievably important, and it also, depending on the words. For example, someone, a company that I've worked with before uses the word freedom as one of their their values. And I'm kind of going, guys, you do realize that the connotation that freedom has to South Africa, like what is the first thing that comes to mind when you use freedom as a, you know? And people were going, apartheid, you know, the struggle. That's the connotation people have to the word freedom. And I'm going, is that what they mean when they're using it as a value? Because if, like, I'm sure that's not what they meant, right?
Yeah.
So using language is unbelievably important, and how you use language is unbelievably important, because you need to assume that people will make the assumption on certain language, and if you don't use it correctly, you could get yourself into a load of problems.
And that's why the concept of context is just cannot be overemphasized enough, because as you say, freedom as a word in South Africa to freedom in other parts of the world is a fundamentally different interpretation.
Yeah.
And therefore the context of the word is vitally important. The last 2 points here are: be transparent about your hiring policies, vitally important, nothing hidden. Reinforce a zero tolerance policy for disrespectful behavior. And those are just 6 of the 12 outcomes that were described there. But these actions demonstrated not just good management, but good management plus focus on inclusion and the value of diversity. And when you unpack those 6 again in even more finite detail, Kevin, the DEI construct exists in every single one of those points that we have covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But my closing statement on the points is a really wonderful point, is to quote the PhD Nancy Rothbard, one of the 3 co-authors on the report, where she states that you have to believe in the value of diversity, and that has to come through your employees. That's why the middle management piece, that's what the middle management piece is doing, showing that you're not paying lip service to it, and it's authentic. It's seen as creating an environment that is going to be better for all.
Just with that statement, we could be speaking for another hour, which I'm not going to do. But and it's so true. You know, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not just a thing that, you know, companies have to. It literally is. It needs to be ingrained as part of the DNA of that company. You know, it needs to be so well thought through and understood. And every single individual, specifically from top management down, has to really, really be part of what the DNA looks like when it comes to this. Because if the company doesn't support that, it just becomes one of those tick box exercises, and we say, yeah, okay, cool, you know, we've done it, we got it, and they fell hopelessly at it.
Yeah, and that's why I really do like the opening sentence of that paragraph, and it's that you have to believe in the value of diversity, and that has to come through to your employers.
Yeah, incredible.
An actionable delivery.
Yeah, just one more thing. You know, it's. I always speak, when we speak about values, I always ask anyone that's sort of going through this process, do you know how your value thinks, feels, and behaves? Right. Yeah. And to this point, you know, when you value diversity, do you know what it thinks like, and what the feeling is, and what feeling like you belong, like you're in a space where everyone is considered? Do you know what that feels like? So suddenly when you attach the human element to this thing that you're trying to achieve, suddenly you're bringing it all closer to understanding why it needs to be part of your belief system. And it's not this thing that's written on a policy or procedure document. Yeah. It's something that intrinsically needs to come out of you, you know.
And Kevin, that's why, you know, behaviors are your values in action.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Simon Sinek, I'll share the video with you, actually. Simon, he does a whole talk on it, and he goes, you must understand that the values are verbs. They are actionable. They are not staid nouns that you place on a wall, kind of going, oh yes, you know, honesty. He's like, and he goes, if honesty is one of your values, you have a problem.
Table stakes. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's true. It's actionable behaviors that you can actually go, these are the values, and you go, okay, cool. What does it think like? What does it feel like? And what does it behave like? Because if you've got those three, you'll be able to teach them how to live that value. Craig,
absolutely.
But as we near to the show, the end of the show, what are the key takeaways about today? And
Kevin, it's gone quickly. The key takeaway points for today are referenced from a Harvard Business Review article that I came across, titled "It's Time to Free the Middle Manager," published by Brian Elliott on 21 May 2021, and it was published to the Managing People section. The article highlights the following 3 key points. So, number 1, conventional 9-to-5 model is growing obsolete. So in the past, the default to 9-to-5 in-person working mode meant that managers could monitor their teams by literally walking around the office and checking in with their employees. But as the pandemic has demonstrated, the flexibility, synchronous work schedules can actually drive better work-life balance, deliver lower stress, and definitely higher productivity. And so many organizations are actually permanently shifting away from that traditional 9-to-5 model. And Kevin, in the new reality, managers must still play an essential role in nurturing talent and forging those team connections, but the old-fashioned management style of walking around approach will no longer be effective. Instead, you're now tasked with intentionally designing the operating norms and workflows for teams that don't depend on synchronous in-person communication. And that's something that many organizations are actually under-prepared to support. And particularly when you look at it in the context of this middle manager layer, if they are not getting the right leadership development, coaching, and training, it's going to be a disaster. The second point there is that digital infrastructure is replacing the physical office, and much of the traditional role of middle managers has been to support communication and collaboration for employees that actually might otherwise have struggled to effectively share information. And when that communication moves from a meeting room to a digital channel, it becomes much easier to automate the documentation and sharing of key information and decisions. And that dramatically increases transparency, but it also eliminates both the need and effectiveness of many information sharing mechanisms that otherwise would actually have been the purview of middle management. And the last point here is measuring output has gotten easier while building shared purpose has gotten harder. With a distributed workforce holding a team together that is building and maintaining strong social ties, forging alignment around singular mission and vision is actually more challenging than ever, Kevin. And the ability to communicate clearly and rally teams that are based remotely has become critical. And at the same time, shifting to digital tools has definitely simplified the process of tracking and measuring output. But the tandem shift means that traditional management approach of command and control is unnecessary in many cases, and very much counterproductive. But what's clear from the content that we shared, Kevin, today is that the pandemic has fundamentally changed the nature and structure of organizations, and that the rapid advances in technology during this period have resulted in very different management styles being developed, but one that highlights the importance of human engagement, managing risks, mitigating threats, mentoring, and leading by example.
Absolutely. Craig, thank you. That was a fascinating conversation, and I'm glad that you could share it with us in such a concise way so we could understand, more about it. For me, one of the quotes that someone once said to me on one of the shows, and I'll never forget this, especially when you think of skill and leadership and what it is you want to change in your world. And to the point of how to really cultivate leadership, he said, if you want to change the world, take a pen and draw a circle around you, and change everything inside the circle, and then you'll change the world.
Yeah.
And just that sentiment, right? Speaks to the importance of taking care of that middle management section. It's how do you show them, how do you empower them, how do you get them to be the leaders you need them to be to really drive that forward? And the only way to do that is giving them enough skill and ability to do that. So fascinating conversation, Craig. I absolutely loved that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Craig, so for next week, what's up for next week's conversation?
Yeah, Kevin, a topic that we actually haven't discussed in any form of detail before, and that's a topic of loyalty programs. But what's interesting for me is that it has relevance not just to the consumer shopper behavior environment, but it actually has a lot of relevance to corporate organizations. And yeah, I think we will be in for a good conversation next week.
Fantastic. Guys, if you want to catch the Lunchtime Marketing and Leadership series, it's happening on eBiz Radio every Thursday at 12 o'clock and on all major podcast channels. Craig, thank you for a lovely conversation, and I will chat to you later.
Thank you, Kevin. Look forward to it.